Welcome back to the Real Estate Reserve podcast. I'm Jason Balin from Hard Money Bankers. My co-host Ian Horowitz from Equity Warehouse. Back in studio this week, Kris Krohn. We had a great podcast episode a few weeks ago. If you didn't listen to that one, make sure you go back and check it out. And we invited Kris back into studio to go through the deal that changed his life. It's a segment that's been extremely popular here on the podcast, and really excited to hear potential deal that either went good or potentially even went bad, but a deal that changed Kris's life. How you doing, Kris?
Jason, really good. Happy to be here, and good to be back with you guys.
Absolutely, yeah. So the floor's yours. Looking forward to hearing this.
Yeah, I feel fortunate. Over the last 20 years, I've been able to help transact over 6,000 different single family deals. But truly, the one that changed my life was the very first deal that I ever did. I was in college. I really hadn't established credit. I didn't have any money in the bank. And I found my first mentor that had made over $10 million in real estate. And I said, tell me what to do. And he said, well, he gave me kind of traditional advice. It wasn't creative. He just said, stay here for another 14 months because then you'll have a 2-year work history. Go get a couple more credit cards and just keep them paid off, but just show that you can use them. And then put $5,000 in the bank. And for my wife and I, we were so poor. That first year I made $18,000 at my job, but as a full-time student, not going into debt, we were going into debt. Like that was rough. And so saving $5,000 over the next 14 months was no easy task, but we were on a mission. And 14 months later, I had the $5,000 in the bank. I had gotten my extra couple of credit cards. I had used them responsibly. I followed all the advice. And I went back to my mentor. I said, okay, I did what you said. What do I do now? And before he could really give me a response, something happened that week. I was driving home, from work. I was a full-time student. I worked full-time, and I had this really weird feeling. And I always believe that a person should trust their intuition. My intuition said to do something very abnormal, said drive home this circuitous path. And I'm a very efficient human being. I'm A to B. I'm direct, but I'm like, okay, whatever. And I live in Utah at the time. I'm a student at Brigham Young University, and I wasn't used to the weather in May because I come from Seattle, Washington. But something weird happened in that weather pattern. I'm driving home this weird way. I'm on a road I'm not normally on. And right then, blue sky, no clouds in the sky, and it's snowing sideways. And I'm like, why is this happening? But right when the snow started hitting my windshield, I looked to the left, and there's a house for sale by owner. And I couldn't get the details on it, but I knew like something inside just pinged me and said, this is why we're driving home weird. So I did a U-turn, pulled over, and I read on the sign, it was a for sale by owner. It had their name, had a phone number, and it showed a price. And the price of the house was $110,000 for this tiny little rundown bungalow. And so without my mentor's help or anything, I get out of my car. Before I know it, I'm reaching in the back of my 1993 287,000 mile Honda Civic with a rusted spoiler. And in the back of the hatchback, I'm grabbing like a pen and paper and pad. And I walk up to the door and I knock. And right after I knock, I freak out. And I'm like, I don't even know what to do. And this gruff woman comes. She says, what do you want? And I said, I'd like to buy your house for $100,000. In other words, I didn't say, hi, what's your name? I literally said, I just want $10,000 off the price. I didn't even know if it was a good price. And she said no, and she slammed the door in my face. And I just knew that I was supposed to be here. So I knocked again. I said, will you at least show me the house? So she walked me around this rundown bungalow and got all the numbers. And then that night I went back to my mentor and I said, what am I looking at here? And he hopped on the MLS and he says, well, this house in good repair is probably worth $150,000, $160,000. So he says, even if you buy it at the full asking price at $110,000, for you, this is a good buy. And I also said, well, there's a basement apartment. He said, even better. So I went to a bank, got turned down, went to another bank, got turned down. Thank goodness before I ran out of time on the contract to fulfill, the third bank came through and I got away with a 3% down payment, FHA. And that 3% down payment cost me $3,300 on that $110K. That was my out of pocket. Everything else was wrapped in. And I remember buying this thing. I was so nervous and I was scared because I didn't know what I was doing. But if I fast forward 2 months later, I had put in a little sweat equity, painted it, fixed it up just a little bit, rented out the basement, and the basement was renting for my mortgage. And the basement was 1 bedroom, 1 bath, but upstairs was 3 bedroom, 1 bath of this 1940s, whatever bungalow. And so my wife and I, we were poor. We were more like Poe, like we couldn't afford all the letters. We went from renting a hole in the ground for $400 a month to moving into a house with $40,000+ of equity and living for free. And I remember just thinking, for me, saving $400 a month was like, that was a big deal for us back then. And I want to just tell a little bit more on the story if I can, because a year later, after we had lived there, we started getting out of debt, and I got a home equity line of credit for 18 grand, and I used it for a house in the city next door. My wife was terrified. She says, Kris, it was one thing for me to support you on this house that we live in, but to buy a house that is bigger and nicer and newer that we're not going to live in. I said, honey, it's a foreclosure. It's worth $250. We're getting it for $160. It's $90,000 below. Just trust me. And she's like sweating bullets. She's like, fine, I'm going to trust you. We bought that house. We did a lease option on it. I'm making $600 a month positive cash flow. And to end the story, it was my wife who came to me 3 months later, and she said, Kris, when are we buying the next house? And I said, what do you mean? She said, Kris, we live for free. We're getting paid $600 a month. We're worth over $100,000 plus, almost 150 grand. Like, this is working. And that's when we kind of had the cool conversation of like, I know you don't want to have a job when you get out of college. Like, what do you want to be? What do you want to do? And we decided that if we bought 20 homes and made $500 on each one of them, that we'd have 10 grand a month and we'd be set. And that's what we did. By the time I graduated college, I had 25 homes. We made 12,000 plus a month. And when all my buddies were exiting college to get jobs, I quit my college job, and I never needed to get a job or work ever again.
Yeah, man, that is a super beautiful and powerful concept that you just utilized. It's a similar way that we got our start. Do you think if your wife would have never came back and like pushed on you to be, babe, I trust you now, go do this, do you think you would have had the same career trajectory you had today without her support?
I do, actually. One of the saddest days in my life that really was where I turned a corner was when I broke the news to her that I wasn't going to be a doctor, because I couldn't pass organic chemistry with an A or a B. I was getting these C's, and I had retaken it. And so when I kind of broke the news and said, I'm not going to be that, she wasn't even disheartened. She's like, that's okay. I didn't marry you because of your, that you wanted to be a doctor. She said, you'll figure it out. And over the next couple of months, I got depressed because I couldn't find a career in college that was going to actually give me what I wanted or what I hoped for. And when I found this real estate thing, it lit me up. Like I felt like I was doing something real for my future. If after that second deal, she hadn't supported me, I would have just said this, honey, I love you. My job's the money. I just want you to trust me as best you can and let me take the risks. And you know what? I'm young, I'm dumb, I might mess it all up. But if you'll ride into war as my support as best you can be, I know my path and I have to do this. And eventually I think she would have turned a corner. I'm just really grateful that happened after the second deal.
Exactly. Yeah, man, that's all. Excuse me. That's awesome. Where's the best place people can find you on the internet? Can they learn something from you? They want to learn more about your story. Where can they find you or get more information on how you did this? If anyone goes to freewealthgift.com, I've got books for free, event tickets of mine. It's the best place for me to just shower you with knowledge and education that's life transforming, financially speaking. And then of course you can just look up the name Kris Krohn on your favorite social media channel and I'll be there. Kris, we appreciate you, brother. Guys, if you got any value out of this, let's give Kris compliments by sharing this. We appreciate you. And guys, we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks for tuning in to the Real Estate Reserve podcast. Do us a favor and like, comment, and share our broadcast. It helps the algorithm and helps us spread the word too. Till next time, thank you for tuning in.